you could say, controversial study here. All right, I think we're live here. Shalom, everyone. Shabbat shalom. Welcome all of our brothers and sisters in Yahuwah Almighty, Yahushua Messiah. Tonight we're going to be doing an interesting study. I guess you could say a continuation of our studies that we dealt with the divine council, the heavenly council in the times past, talking about who are really the judges and rulers of Psalms 82 and Deuteronomy 32 verse 8 and all that. So this is going to deal with tonight the idea. We're going to really dive into this topic. Is there other so-called lesser mighty ones in Scripture? The reason, you could say, controversial study here. Sorry about that. All right. I apologize. Got background noise going on from my end. So basically, we're going to deal with this controversial topic. The reason I say controversial is because Christianity, most of Christendom has been taught that Exodus 20 is just referring to graven images. And they obviously, graven images are not real in the sense that they don't move, they don't taste, they don't feel. So in essence, the mighty ones themselves are the graven images. We're going to really test that assumption and see if that's the case. Because if that's the case, then it's kind of anticlimactic, in my opinion, for Yahuwah to say, you shall have no other mighty ones. Okay, he's talking about these other mighty ones. And you'll see in other scriptures where idols are not even mentioned, he's calling entities that exist mighty ones. Okay, so this is what we're going to deal with first. We're going to deal with first, is this the case? So I think what would be smart is to read the verse from Exodus 20 first, and then we'll get into all these other cross references here. So you shall have no other mighty ones, or a more familiar term to people would be no other deities other than Yahuwah. So we're going to look into that verse here. So Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter 20 here. So this is the tablets of stone Yahuwah originally gives to Yasharal, to Israel at Mount Sinai, or if you have a Septuagint, sometimes it'll say Mount Horeb for Mount Sinai. It's the same place, FYI. So let's see here. Let me I think it's the first two commandments here. So it says, and Yahuwah spoke all these words, saying, I am Yahuwah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Right here, it says, you shall have no other mighty ones besides me. You shall not make yourself an idol. Now, pause. Why is, if an idol, if mighty ones are just idols, right? If they're just statues, why is there two separate commandments here? Yeah, that's right. Think about it. Okay, he says, first commandment, he says, do not have any other mighty ones, any other deities. Okay, then he says, do not make yourself an idol, graven image. Okay, basically, to explain this, you have to understand ancient cultures. You have to understand the basically Wiccan cultures of that time, and the pagans. They would use mediums to worship their mighty ones. Okay, so the images were not the mighty one itself. It was a medium to worship the mighty one. Okay, so what Yahuwah is saying is, you don't worship any other mighty ones, and you shall not make you could say, a representation of those other mighty ones. That's what he's actually saying. Then he talks about do not make yourself an idol, nor the likeness of anything, whatever things are in heaven above or beneath, and waters under the earth, and all of that. So do not bow down to them, nor serve them, for I am Yahuwah your Elohim, and jealous Elohim, or zealous might actually be the right word there, actually. So the point of verses 1 to 4 there, he's dealing with idolatry, but different forms of idolatry. So obviously, if it's a separate commandment, that means there has to be an idea of these mighty ones being real. If not, there's no point for him to separate, do not make an idol versus do not worship any other mighty ones. You know what I'm saying? So right there is a clue that there are other mighty ones and they do exist. Okay. They are lesser mighty ones, in my opinion. They would be lesser. They're not equal to Yahuwah. They're lesser than him. They are under him. They are subservient to Yahuwah, the true Almighty, the true Creator. Okay, so, and I'll show you here how an actual person, it seems like, became a mighty one or got people to worship him as a mighty one. So a lot of people throughout history, you'll see a lot of the mighty ones of the nations were once men. And I forget who is quoted to say that. It might be Eusebius, but there's a historian that actually talks about that a lot of these so-called mighty ones of the nations, some of them were giants, some of them were fallen angels, some of them were regular humans that were just idolized, and they became the mighty ones of the nations. Right, here we go. We're going to go to Genesis 10, verse 8 here. It says, and Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a giant on the earth. Even though I believe giant is the more accurate translation of Givarim, Givarim can mean mighty one. Okay, so let's just say for the argument's sake, it's supposed to be mighty one and not giant. This verse in the text here would be saying he began to be a mighty one. So people started worshiping him as a deity. Okay. So obviously we know Nimrod existed. He's not fake. He's not just a carved image, right? So this is showing what we're talking about here. Okay, so the mighty ones of the nations are not just carved images. Okay, the carved images represent the person who's being worshipped. Okay, so again, and you can go throughout the mythologies. Nimrod in different cultures after he died was immortalized as in the pagan cultures as the sun god, the sun god. Okay, so whatever sun god that's being worshipped in every religion represents him. In essence, they are making these images in all these different man-made religions. Through these images, they're worshiping Nimrod or Satan. So they're getting worshipped through the idols. You see what I'm saying? The idol itself is not actually being worshipped. Even though they are bowed down into it and serving it, it's really the entity that idol represents. So hopefully I'm not confusing you here. So and again, we're gonna see more of this, how Yahuwah even acknowledges that there's so-called deities or mighty ones of the Gentiles that he gave to the Gentiles when he gave them into a reprobate mind when they rebelled at the Tower of Babel. Okay, so we're going to get into that too. I think it's important that we look also in the Brit Hadashah now in a cross-reference. Paul himself, this is Paul's words, okay? Satan is called the deity or mighty one of this world. So Satan is being called a deity, okay? So this should give us a concept that there's lesser mighty ones. This should give us an obvious concept. But unfortunately, we're not taught this in our upbringing. Or we're taught that if we acknowledge there's lesser mighty ones, somehow that's polytheism. I don't know. I really don't get it. I don't get that Christian tradition, how they equate that with polytheism. Acknowledging that there's lesser mighty ones of the Gentiles who are not in covenant with the true Almighty, I don't know how that's equated to polytheism, but anyway. So it says here in 2 Corinthians 4:4, it says, among whom the deity of this age has blinded the minds of the unbelievers, so that the illumination of the glad tidings of the esteem of Messiah, who is the image of Yahuwah or Alua, should not shine on them. So basically, Yahuwah allows, who Paul is calling the mighty one of this world, Satan in context, okay? Yahuwah allows Satan, who is the mighty one of this world, to blind unbelievers. So as you can see here, Satan, a fallen angel, is being called a quote-unquote mighty one or deity. Okay, so again, this shows that obviously there's some reality to these mighty ones of the Gentiles being real people. Okay, It's not just an image. Okay. All right. So let's go to Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. Actually, you know what? Let's set a firm foundation here. Let's go to Genesis first. Actually, Genesis 11, 7-8. This is the original Tower of Babel event. I really like how the Targum of Pseudo Jonathan words it. It kind of shows you this idea of the divine council here, the heavenly council. Okay, so it says in Genesis 11, verse 7, in the Targum Pseudo Jonathan, and Yahuwah said to the 70 angels, which stand before him, come, we will descend and will there commingle their language, that a man shall not understand the speech of his neighbor, his brother, neighbor. Okay. And the word of Yahuwah was revealed against the city, and with him. Notice how it jumps from Yahuwah to the word of Yahuwah as the same person. That's very key to pay attention to. Okay. And was revealed against the city, and the 70 angels having reference to the 70 nations, 70 countries that came from the Tower of Babel, each having its own language, and there the writings of its own hand, and he dispersed them from there upon. Maybe my shared screen is not working. Yeah, thank you, Ray, for letting me know that. Thank you. All right, so here we go. So it says, and I'll just repeat what I read since the shared screen was screwing up. And Yahuwah said, verse 7, Yahuwah said to the 70 angels, which stand before him, come, we will descend, and there we will commingle their language, that a man shall not understand the speech of his neighbor. And then in verse 8, notice how it equates Yahuwah as the word of Yahuwah as the same person. And the word of Yahuwah was revealed against the city, with him 70 angels, having reference to the 70 nations or countries, each having its own language, and there the writing of its own hand, and he dispersed them from there upon all the face of the earth in the 70 languages. One knew not what his neighbor would say, but one slew the other, and they ceased from building the city. Okay, so, all right, let's see here. We're going to go to, so the next cross-reference here is, Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. And it gets very weird in your translations, just letting you guys know. It might be worded a little different if you have a Masoretic text translation. So just letting you know. Go ahead, Brother Joshua. I see you got your hand up. I don't know if that was a mistake or.
No, that was by accident.
Okay, no problem. All right, so I'm going to show you guys something cool here. So we just read that. You'll notice how the Dead Sea Scrolls version of Deuteronomy 32:8 and the Septuagint will agree with what we just read there from the Targum. I'm going to show you something really interesting here. Okay. So this is the Septuagint version of Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. When the Most High divided the nations, divided the sons of Noah, okay, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the nations according to the number of the angels of Elohim, or in the Hebrew, it would have been the sons of Elohim or Malachim of Elohim. Okay, so obviously this is going back to the Tower of Babel event, in context. So obviously if he's setting them up over the nations, they're ruling over the nations. I'm going to show you here how we're going to go to the next cross-reference to show you guys how these rulers and judges over the nations actually were put over the nations for those that rejected Yahuwah were actually pretty much given these hosts of heaven to worship them. As crazy as that sounds, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. Stupid YouTube. Deuteronomy 4:19 we're going to go to. Yeah, that's a cool connection. Yeah, I noticed that before too. So let me go to, so we're going to go to Deuteronomy 4:19-20. It really doesn't matter what version you read this verse from. You're going to get the same idea. The Septuagint is a little bit more obvious, though, about what the stars actually are here. They actually call the stars heavenly bodies, aka angels. Okay. Show you what I'm talking about here. It says here, unless having looked up to the sky, having seen the sun moon, and the stars, and all the heavenly bodies. You should go astray and worship them and serve them, which Yahuwah Elohim has distributed. So it's actually saying Yahuwah has given them to the Gentiles. But Yahuwah took you, meaning Yasharal, Israel, and led you forth out of the land of Egypt, out of the iron furnace, out of Egypt, to be to him a people of inheritance, as it is this day. So the best way to explain this to someone that this is foreign to is when you reject Yahuwah, you want to do your own thing, he's going to give you a reprobate mind to worship the host of heaven. That's what it's saying. So he actually gives non-believers angels to worship, as crazy as that sounds. It's literally what it's saying there. So he's giving them into a reprobate mind to actually worship the signs of the heaven. So again, that's showing us that fallen angels, or even you could even say messengers in general, the Gentiles worship them as their quote unquote their gods. Okay. So again, that means the mighty ones of the nations are technically real. They are real beings that exist. Okay. So, all right. I think there's somewhere in Acts. If anyone finds that in Acts 7, where Stephen talks about where when Yahuwah divorces Yasharal, he gives them into worship of the host of heaven. Just if you guys know the verse, just let me know. I could add that to the study too. So let's see here. I think we're going to go next with 1 Corinthians 8:5. We're going to go there next. Okay, so 1 Corinthians 8:5. Okay. So here we go. Perfect. Here we go. Okay, so First Corinthians 8:5. For even though there are what are called mighty ones, whether in heaven or in the earth. So again, is an idol in heaven? That would be my question. I think all of us can say idol's not in heaven. Okay. So obviously he's not talking about graven images. Okay. He's saying whether in heaven or in earth or in the earth. Well, where are the giants right now? In the earth, in the pit, as there are many mighty ones and many masters. So right here, Paul is referencing back to this ancient understanding that the mighty ones of the nations are real entities. They exist. They are not just wood and stone idols. Okay. So it's 1 Corinthians 8:5 is where we get this concept from. And it's talking about mighty ones that are in heaven. Okay, again, host of heaven. So that's what he's referring to. Romans 1 is talking about idols, if I'm not mistaken. It's talking about not just idols, but worshiping the whole creation, you could even say. It's like it lumps everything up. That instead of worshiping the true creator, Yahuwah, they're worshiping everything that's created, like including trees, including people. It's like it's lumping it all up. What I'm referring to is Acts 7, where it actually talks about Yahuwah, when Israel became reprobate, he gave them into the worship of the stars. Let me see here if I can find it. And it talks about the messenger of Yahuwah here. Here we go. I think starting at verse 39, and our fathers chose not to obey him. So Acts 7, verse 39, but they forsook him, and in their hearts they returned to Egypt. And as they said to Aaron, make Elohim for us to go before us, because we do not know what has become of this Masha who brought us out of the land of Egypt. And they made a calf for themselves in those days, and they sacrificed sacrifices to the idol. They were delighting in the work of their hands. Here we go. This is the verse I'm talking about here. Verse 42. And Yahuwah turned and handed them over to become worshipers of the army of heaven. Right there. This perfectly parallels with Deuteronomy 4, verse 19, if Yahuwah did the same thing to those that rebelled against him at the Tower of Babel. So that's the reason I'm bringing this verse up here. Same context. So basically, Yahuwah eventually divorces the house of Israel, right? So he would divorce them. He wouldn't be their Elohim anymore if he divorces them, right? So then they become someone else's spiritual wife. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
It's a little bit off topic. I'll just pose the question and we can bring it up later, just so I don't to talk about when Yahuwah divorced Yehuda. If he ever did, if that's ever mentioned in scripture, but we can talk about that after.
Yeah, I'll touch on it really quick. As far as what I've seen in scripture and what other brothers would agree with me, that there is no mention of them ever being divorced. I don't think they ever did get divorced. And the reasoning I think Yahuwah has for it is mainly messianic prophecy. Yeah. It's not that they were more righteous than the other house. It was the fact that, in essence, he needed them together as a house for the Messiah to come through the Judah's loins, if that makes any sense. So it's more of more or less a necessity to keep them together and to keep them in covenant. It's not that they were any righteous than the house of Israel. No. Scripture, though, never mentions they're divorced. I think the fair assumption is they never got divorced because of that purpose. The house of Israel, obviously, Jeremiah, I think it's 3, talks about them being divorced. Judah never gets divorced, even all the way up into Messiah's first coming. They were in covenant from Babylon, coming back from Babylon, all the way to Messiah's first coming. So I think the fair assumption is they never were divorced.
Someone says that they were divorced when they were kicked out of the land in 70 AD. That's false.
No, that's false.
No, I mean I think that's like a Christian understanding, if I remember correctly. That's like a assumption, and that has to do with dispensational theology, if I'm not mistaken, because John Nelson Darby definitely would hold on to that belief system, because in his belief system, Christianity is the new bride. So that would be a crutch for dispensationalism if Judah was completely cut off in 70 AD. I've heard that before, but I've never seen any proof for it in scripture.
No, not at all.
What I believe, though, he did kick them out as a punishment for not accepting. The majority of them didn't accept Yahusha. So I do see that as a punishment, but that doesn't mean that he completely kicked them out of covenant.
No.
I would have to see proof of that in scripture or some type of prophecy. Anyway, but before I could assume that, since I know where that belief comes from, go ahead, Mom.
Just a thought that I have had, we know that in talking about them going over to Babylon and all, look at Daniel and his friends, from the tribe of Benjamin. And I mean, Yahuwah never, ever was not with him.
No.
I mean, that was obvious that he was faithful to Yahuwah, and Yahuwah had his back that whole time, So I'm thinking that he didn't divorce them, or there would not have been that kind of, protection and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that's just my opinion.
And it's kind of hard to tell whether they're in covenant or not, because it's hard to tell because, as far as the new requirement now was that you had to believe in Messiah to be in covenant. So technically, I mean, you could say it says some of them were broken off. We don't know exactly how many were broken off because of unbelief. So I don't believe that has to do with 70 AD.
No.
When Paul's talking about that in Romans 11, he's saying in general, those natural branches have been broken off who didn't believe. So I don't think 70 AD has anything to do with that. That's just in general. If they don't believe in Messiah, they're not in covenant. But there's Yahudim that believed in Messiah that became in covenant again. So I definitely don't agree with people that believe that Judah as a whole was kicked out. It doesn't make sense to me. Then you're ignoring what Paul says in Romans 11. So so 70 AD was more or less a punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because, well, I think depending on the individual, I don't know who the individual is, but if you're coming from a Christian background, you're probably taught that as a child in the church. So that's probably a preconceived bias some individual might have. I know that it's a very big belief system of dispensationalism, that 70 AD is when they were fully cut off. They were no longer his people. That's a very big dispensationalism doctrine. So whether some of us realize it or not, we would be holding on to dispensationalism belief system to assume that. There's no scripture in the Brit Hadashah that says they were completely divorced as a whole people. Yeah, some of them were cut off. I agree with that in Romans 11, but not as a whole. No.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, very tuned question, brother. Very, very tuned question. But yeah, unless people can show me somewhere in the New Covenant where it says that, I'm holding on to that. Only certain individuals from that house were cut off because of unbelief. But yeah. Let me see here. I think we should go next to Psalms 82, verse 7, because this will be a key verse here, showing that this understanding of the divine counsel, again, reiterating that. So we're going to go to Psalms 82, verses 6 to 7. A lot of people like to think this is talking about humans. I'm going to show you how it makes no sense if it's talking about mortals. First of all, he's talking to beings that cannot die, that they're going to die. Okay, number one. He's talking to immortal beings, saying you're going to die like mankind. Okay, in context. All right, saying, here we go, right here. So Psalms 82, verse 6 says, I have said you are mighty ones. You are, I guess, lesser deities would be a more common term. You are all children of the highest, of the Most High. Okay, number one, genetically, we are not children of the Most High. So that's the first thing you have to understand about definitions in the Tanakh. Whenever it says sons of Elohim, children of the Most High, children of the highest, as a genetic physical term, it can't refer to humans. Cannot. That's just the way it goes. And it's called the law of precedence. Okay, whatever the original definition of a phrase, you have to keep that definition. So he's talking of divine beings that are physically, genetically his children. Okay, not children of Adam. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
So I said you are a mighty one. Therefore you will die like children of men, and you will fall like each of the princes. It's talking about children of men, and then says fall like each of the princes. That's not princes as in principalities, as in
human.
Okay.
Like kings, princes, yeah. Sometimes that's where it gets confusing, because I think the same Hebrew and Greek word for princes is used for human and heavenly princes. So yeah, that's where the context comes in. So they're talking about dying like the children of Adam, and you will fall like each of the princes. So in that context, yeah, it's talking about like human princes. Like basically he's telling them you're going to die like King David did. You're going to die like Saul did. So the reason I wouldn't take that as principalities is because they are principalities. It would be kind of ridiculous for Yahuwah to compare them to something they already are. You know what I'm saying? So we know that they're princes in a principality sense over the nations. So I would take it to mean princes, human leaders. in general. Technically, in a biblical sense, Biden is a human prince or king over the United States of America, and so on and so forth. So that's the concept of divine counsel there, which a lot of religions have copied for themselves. A lot of these pantheons have copied or distorted for themselves, like the Greek pantheon religion has a divine counsel and all that. So basically, these religions just copy the Bible. Whatever they like from the Bible, they copy and paste, and then they twist it. But yeah, you'll find a heavenly counsel concept in every belief system, every ancient belief system. So, but yeah. So Deuteronomy 13:2, 29, verse 26, and 28:64. So we're going to go to those, and let's see here. So, okay, so. Okay. All right. So this is talking about how to spot a false prophet here. It says, and the sign of the wonder come to pass, which he spoke to you, saying, let us go and serve other mighty ones, which we do not know. Okay. So again, other mighty ones we don't know. I think it would be very anticlimactic if he's referring to mighty ones we don't know as a statue. I think kind of would make no logical sense in my opinion. So let's go to Deuteronomy 29, verse 26. 29:26. Let's see here. So it says here in Deuteronomy 29:26, and they went and served other mighty ones, which they knew not, neither did he assign them to them. Again, it's talking about they're going out and serving other mighty ones, which they did not know. Okay, like I said, it would be very anticlimactic if we interpret mighty ones as just statues. Kind of doesn't make much sense. To me, I mean, if that's the case, he could have just used the word idol there. I mean, that's what they're going to serve. That's all it is. It would make more sense to use the word in that text in the context of that statue or idol. Now, I want to show you guys something that really, really started helping me understand this concept. The idols represent the mighty one. They're not the mighty one themselves. Okay, so mind you, Israel's just fresh out of Egypt, right? There's still paganism in their mindset, right? Okay, I'm going to just keep that in mind when I'm about to read Exodus 32, verse 8. Just keep that in mind. They've learned a pagan culture and how to serve mighty ones in the pagan way. Okay, so it says here, Exodus 32, verse 8, they have quickly gone out of the way which you commanded. They have made for themselves a calf and worshipped it and sacrificed to it, saying, this is your mighty one, O Yashua, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. The reason I bring this up here is because after they make the golden calf, the feast that they're about to have in conjunction with the worship of the calf, they basically say it's a feast to Yahuwah. If the calf is not supposed to represent Yahuwah, what's the point of saying that? So obviously, what happened was they were in Egypt so long, for 200 and something years, they started implementing the worship of these pagan nations, and they were trying to basically like copy and paste, like, oh, okay, we like that. That's an interesting way of worship. Let's worship Yahuwah that way. And then you go to Deuteronomy 12, fast forward to Deuteronomy 12, Yahuwah is making a whole set of commands like, do not worship me that way. I know I just brought you out of Egypt. You saw them use mediums, statues to worship their mighty ones with. Don't do that. That's the context of Deuteronomy 12. Okay. So to me, it makes perfect sense that that the mighty one is actually the being that the statue represents, just like the image of the beast is not the beast himself. You know, to me, that's common sense. So they're definitely going on there. So now we're going to get to the part where this really would make no sense if these other mighty ones do not exist. They're just stone, they're just wood, they're just gold or whatever, and they're inanimate objects and they don't exist. Why does Scripture always give these titles to Yahuwah, like the mighty one of mighty ones or the king of the mighty ones, if they're just wood and stone? And the mighty ones are just wood and stone. They're not real people that ever existed. This kind of would make no sense. These titles would make no sense to be giving to Yahuwah. What? He's king of statues? Like, I mean, to me, that would make no sense at all. So we're going to go with a couple of verses here. So Deuteronomy 10, verse 17, we're going to go there first. Let me actually give another cross-reference here. I almost forgot. Chapter 9, verse 26 in the LXX. Okay. All right, so I think we'll go with chapter 7 first, actually. So let's go to Deuteronomy 7, verse 25. Okay. Deuteronomy 7:25. Okay. No, that can't be right. That's got to be a typo or something. Yeah, I got to look that up again. That's got to be a typo. Never mind. All right, let's go to chapter 9, verse 26 of Deuteronomy. I think that other cross-reference was incorrect. Okay. Chapter 9, verse 26. I prayed to Elohim and said, O Yahuwah, King of mighty ones, destroy not your people and your inheritance, whom you did redeem, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt with your great power and your strong hand and with your high arm. It's interesting to note the Greeks took this scriptural title and tried to ascribe it to their, king of the gods, so to speak. They tried to replace Yahuwah with Zeus in their religion. Okay, so this concept, king of the mighty ones, is even found in the pantheons out there. So now it would be interesting to find out where this title actually originates. It'd be pretty interesting. But so I find it interesting that Yahuwah is mentioned as king of the mighty ones here, showing who the true Almighty is, who is the true above all. Okay, he's above all mighty ones. Okay, so let's go to Deuteronomy 10, verse 17. All right, so Deuteronomy 10, verse 17. All right, let's see here. For Yahuwah your Elohim, he is Elohim of Elohim and master of masters, the great, strong, and terrible Elohim, who does not accept persons, nor will he by any means accept a bribe. So again, he is the mighty one of mighty ones. All right, let's see here. Let's go to the next cross-reference here. And Mom, where is that verse in Exodus that talks about who is like you, O Yahuwah, among the mighty ones?
Oh gosh.
Is that Exodus 18 or 19? I forget that. It's the Song of Moshe. I know that it's in that song. All right, while you're looking for that, I'll go to the next cross-reference.
The song was in Deuteronomy. No?
It might be Deuteronomy
I thought it was
32.
when he was like restating.
No, but the actual original Song of Moses, I think, or I forget, there's two different Psalms.
Oh, is there?
There's one in Exodus, one in Deuteronomy. So I forget which one is which. Yeah, there's Exodus 15.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. Thank you for that. Okay, so Exodus 15, I think, is the one that talks about who is like you among the mighty ones.
Hmm.
Your right hand. Yep, this is the one Alan Horvath does the audio for. Yeah, Exodus 15. Yep. Princes of Edom, trembling, fierce, come plan. Okay, hold on. I could probably find this real quick. Yep, Exodus 15:11.
Okay.
So this is another one that I think we should add to the study here. I'll show you guys, because literally it's basically saying these other mighty ones are nothing compared to them in context. So these mighty ones that actually exist are nothing compared to them, is what they're saying. So it says, who is like you among the mighty ones? And I do like that certain English translations put a lowercase g,
Yeah.
like lowercase gods. Okay, who is like you among the mighty ones? O Yahuwah, who is like to you, esteemed in set apartness, marvelous in splendor, doing wonders. So this is showing that Yahuwah is above all the mighty ones of the Gentiles. He's above them. They are not equal to him. All right. Yeah. So that's something we don't realize. If they're just talking about statues and engraven images, that kind of dilutes that, to be honest, in my opinion. That kind of dilutes it and makes it not that special. Oh, who's like you among statues? To me, it just doesn't make any sense. When you take out the divine council concept, it does not make any sense what they're saying here. So obviously they're talking about beings that actually exist. So Exodus, my bad, not Exodus, Joshua 22, verse 22. So going back to the section of mighty one of mighty ones and king of the mighty ones. Okay, so Joshua 22, 22. Let's see here. Elohim, even Elohim is Yahuwah. And Elohim, even Elohim himself knows. Okay, so that was I don't know, is that different in the Masoretic? Yahuwah, Elohim, Yahuwah. Yeah, nah. Blue letter Bible screwed that one up. I'm gonna have to take that off. That's not talking about mighty one of mighty ones. Okay. Go to the next one here in Psalms. So Psalms 136, verse 2. So 136, verse 2 in the book of Psalms. 136, verse 2. Give thanks to Elohim, to the Elohim of mighty ones, for his kindness is everlasting or eternal. Okay. So I really like how the ISR here tries to make distinction here. So it says, give thanks to the Elohim of mighty ones. I kind of like that. I really do. So I'm going to actually save that. It might be the thumbnail for this video. That would be perfect. So, yeah. All right. So let's move on to Daniel, I believe. Okay. So we got a couple of cross references from Daniel here. Daniel 2:47, I believe, by the way, is Nebuchadnezzar himself speaking. So he's acknowledging that Yahuwah is over the mighty ones that he worshipped. Okay. All right. Let's see here, Daniel 2:47. Okay, it says here. Right. And the king answered and said to Daniel, of a truth, your Elohim, not Nebuchadnezzar's, your Elohim is the Elohim of Elohim and King of Lord of Master of Kings, who reveals mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery. Okay. Yep. Exactly. So it's interesting to note Nebuchadnezzar is the one saying that. It's interesting to note a former pagan. Okay. Now we're going to go to Daniel chapter 11, verse 36. That's the last cross-reference we have. Mind you, this is a prophecy about the beast in Daniel 11. Okay. Daniel 11:36. And this is all about his military conquest. I really recommend people that like studying prophecy and trying to figure out end times prophecy and prophecies referring to the anti-Messiah. Definitely read Daniel 10 and 11. You'll get a better background of what happens before he actually comes to Jerusalem in the third temple. All right, so Daniel 11:36. And he shall do according to his will, and the king shall exalt and magnify himself against every mighty one, and shall speak great swelling words, and shall prosper until the indignation shall be accomplished, for his coming to an end. Now, this is interesting here. It seems like the Septuagint's different. Oh, no, all right. No, they gave me an incorrect cross-reference. My bad. Sometimes Blue Letter Bible does that. Anyway, that's an interesting scripture nonetheless. That's actually where Paul quotes from in 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 3-4, when referring to the abomination of desolation. So, yeah. But anyway, that's the end of tonight's study. I hope you guys got something interesting. Hopefully it helped a lot of us shed and unlearn this tradition that's been taught to us in our church upbringing. And so as you can see here, the mighty ones of the nations are not just statues, okay? Mm-hmm. So hopefully that helped you guys understand a lot of this stuff, because it's going to be important once you start getting into other places in Scripture, where Yahuwah is being compared to the quote-unquote lesser mighty ones of the nations, these so-called Elohim of the nations. So I hope this was a baraka for you guys, for all those that were listening in and following along and watching our study. Have a great rest of your Shabbat, all of our brothers and sisters in Yahuwah Almighty, Yahushua Messiah.